With the body of our lamp and the shade colorized, next comes the neck and the base. We want these two fittings to end up looking like polished brass. The process to do that is almost identical to what we just did, with the addition of just a couple of minor details. Start by making sure you're on the brass layer and bring up the Hue and Saturation dialog box again. Click Colorize and set Hue to 55, Saturation to 80, and Lightness to a +20. That should start to give the fittings the look of brass. The next step is a little trickier since what we're about to do is completely subjective and requires a little bit of artistic license. So, at this point, I recommend you make a new snapshot in your history palette and save your work. That way, if you're not happy with your results, it'll be easy to go back and try again. What we need to do is increase the contrast of our brass and at the same time create the illusion of reflections. There are a lot of ways we could probably do this, but I'm going to use a combination of the Dodge and Burn tools and the Blur tool. Start by zooming in on the neck, and with the rectangular marquee tool set to a 0 feather radius, select the conical part of the fitting. Then hide the selection so it won't obstruct our view. Command H or Control H if you're on a PC. Then, using the Burn tool, with the 20 pixel hard brush, set to midtones, at 80% exposure, create some dark reflections that roughly take on the shape of the object. Keeping in mind, there's no right or wrong here, and if necessary, undo it and try again until you're satisfied with the results. When you are, inverse the selection, hide it again, and do the same thing with the bottom half. When you're done, deselect and go back with the Blur tool using a small brush at 100% strength and soften some of the hard edges. Now, using the Dodge tool and the 5 pixel hard brush, set to midtones, at 100% exposure, go back and put in some sharp-edged highlights. For this part, you don't need any selections. Start by putting in a highlight along the top edge of the cylindrical part using the same technique as before. Begin outside the shape, click and drag while holding down the Shift key. Then, dab in some spot highlights here and there as though the brass were picking up reflections from other light sources around the room. The last thing we need to do is reflect some of the red color from the body of our lamp into the brass. To do that, make red the foreground color, grab the paintbrush with a 10 pixel soft brush, mode set to multiply, at 40% opacity. Then just paint in a little color on the part of the neck that would most likely reflect the lamp body, which in this case would be at the bottom. When you're completely satisfied with the brass neck, move down and do the same thing on the brass base. Burn in some dark reflections. Blur some of the hard edges. Dodge in the highlights. And add some reflected color.